Welcome to J is for Justice podcast. If live breaking news and following true crime is your thing, then please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you like what you see in my videos, please consider giving them a thumbs up. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, friends. Welcome back to J is for Justice. This is our final and third day of the reading of the Idaho 4. And I think we'll finish it in record time this morning. I hope you have your coffee, and I hope you guys had a good night. We left off on chapter 114 yesterday, and I went through and I actually chaptered every chapter in both lives. So that took me quite a while. Thanks for being here this morning. Hey, Real Kels. Hello, Melissa B. Hi, Glenda and Beans. Good morning, Holly. Chaos wants to know, anyone see Steve's interview last night? I did. I made a short out of part of it. Steve was on, was it News Nation or Ashley Banfield's show? Carolina P., good morning from Berlin. How cool is that? Hi, Danny. Hey, Raven. Hi, Elfig. Hey, Ellie. Good morning. I have my coffee and my J for J mug. We had 420 edition mugs this year and last year. If you would like to pick them up, you could pick one up in the merch store. Cheers, Mrs. O. Good to see you this morning. Barbara B. Hot Mess, good morning. The lovely Diana. It's good to see y'all. This has been fun. I'm going to miss you when we're done with this book. What will we ever do? Hey, Evelyn. I don't know who Pablo is. Oh, the prison guy? Hey, Nexus. Hey, Beth. Jay, do you know if they drove straight through? I don't. But there was a Comfort Inn room key and a stay information. So you are. Cheers, Kels. Hey, Vesty. I'm still waking up. So I'm on my second cup of coffee. Whew. I think Steve is going to spill it, man. But did you guys hear the part that I found interesting was when he said that Mabit had been the one that told him about Kaylee's injuries and that it looked like she was gagged. I feel like this crime was supposed to be like BTK in a way. Like he did, Diana, he did an interview last night. He said that Kaylee had injuries in the corners of her mouth and on her face right here to indicate there had been something there or maybe a hand. And that came from Steve. He said that my butt told him that. Horrible. The details that have come out are just horrible. And I think it's going to get worse. Thank you, Beans. All right, we're going to get into it. There's a lot of drama going on this morning, so let's just stay here and be drama-free from everything. All right. Chapter 114, Moscow, Idaho, January 4th, 2023. Let me make sure my sound is loud enough. How's that? Is that loud enough for you? Chapter 114, Moscow, Idaho, January 4th, 2023. The Suburban pulls into the garage. The steel doors lock behind him. Brian Koberger walks down the 20 steps to the fluorescent lit dungeon that is the tiny underground Latah County Jail. It was state-of-the-art construction back in 1972 when someone with a sense of humor scrawled outside the newly built booking room, "Welcome to the Latah Hilton." Decades later, the graffiti was removed. Most of the inmates are there for the usual reasons: drugs, DUIs, domestic assault, or domestic abuse, assault. Technically, the jail, with a capacity of 38 inmates, is too small to meet the state's legal requirements. There aren't enough rooms. The inmates are housed in a square around the common area: kitchen, shower, and library. They're allowed just 1 hour a day combined to use the library and the 20 by 10 foot wired-in exercise yard. There's nothing else to do except watch TV. It's a 24-hour cycle of boredom with the odd flash of excitement. In 1984, Leslie Rogue, the gentleman robber who was being held for a federal bank robbery, walked out, aided by a map and a door opened by the jailer. He was not apprehended until 1996 in Guatemala. He's due to be let out in May of 2034 at the age of 94. In 1992, William A. Davison, a twice-convicted murderer, escaped from the exercise yard. He was captured after a manhunt lasting a month. The common shared cell for up to 8 people is not where Kohberger goes. Well, thank Lord he didn't walk out. I wonder if Brian Kohberger had looked up and knew that this Latah County Jail was not all that secure. And I wonder if he wanted to pull a Bundy. You know how Bundy escaped in Colorado? Months later, a friend of Josie and Lyndon's who was drunk and booked there for the night sees Kohberger in a cell alone, per his maximum security status. Jail staff are not going to take a risk with him. Inmates have wives and children too, Sergeant Brandon Jordan, the deputy who was injured in the fatal shooting of Officer Lee Newbill, said. What he did is out of a horror movie. In the prison world, there's status that comes with harming someone like him. The deputy's priority is to keep Kohberger alive. They need him to face the wheels of justice. Nobody, Jordan said, wants to fuck this up. Part 6, Warpath. Chapter 115. Moscow, Idaho, January 5th, 2023. They bring Brian Kohberger up from his cell into the tiny Latah County courtroom, and he sits in the defendant box within spitting distance of the Gonsalves and Laramie families. He's shackled and clad in orange prison clothes. He doesn't turn to look at anyone. His only animated gestures are directed to Ann Taylor, his public defender, who sits easily beside him. Taylor has long, blonde, shiny hair, and everything about her, clothing, posture, and demeanor, exudes a no-nonsense confidence. If she's ruffled to be representing America's most notorious suspect, she doesn't show it. Taylor works for the public defender's office in Kootenai County, where serious crime is far more abundant than it is in Latah. In an irony that will soon come to light, one of her clients was Xana's mom, Kara Northington. Taylor avoided the conflict of interest by quietly filing for withdrawal from Northington's case. Moscow is scarcely unfamiliar territory for Taylor. She attended the U of I law school. It's almost impossible to find a lawyer in the area who didn't. In fact, the man who gave Taylor her first job is now sitting a couple feet away from her on the other team, Bill Thompson. So she used to work with Thompson, y'all. She worked for Thompson. Judge Megan Marshall, the Moscow magistrate, is another part of the cozy UI Law Graduate Circle, and she reads out the charges against Kohberger. 4 counts of murder, 1 of burglary. She asks if he understands them. He says he does. She explains that the punishment is either the death penalty or life in prison. The prosecutor has 60 days to decide which one he intends to pursue. Judge Marshall sets another court date, a few days hence, to determine the date for the week-long preliminary hearing, during which the prosecution will lay out its evidence to show grounds for a trial. Steve Gonsalves watches it all go down, with a mixture of extreme emotions. He has not been eating or sleeping more than 3 hours a night. Christy and Olivia have been telling him they're worried about him. But it's tough for him to sit back and watch this guy with the strange eyes and the passive face, considering the fact that he's alive and Kaylee is dead. Where is the justice in that? Steve read Brett Payne's probable cause affidavit. It was filed 1 hour before court proceedings began, and there's a lot in it, undoubtedly. The highlight, clearly, is the DNA found on the snap of the knife sheath. It's going to be hard to argue against that. That's what his sources in the local FBI are telling him. DNA is the gold standard of evidence. But Payne's affidavit says that the investigators got to Kohberger's DNA via his dad's, so the defense could look for loopholes there, and Steve is worried. Will the DNA evidence hold up as legitimate and legitimately obtained? Will the defense try to argue that Kohberger's DNA could have gotten on the knife sheath years before? Steve plans to do his own research on how long DNA could last there. I'm told that the version of a K-bar has a special material for the button, and it's copper-based, and that dramatically speeds up the deterioration of the DNA. Tests have shown sometimes less than 24 hours to the max 7 days. And what about the lack of an obvious link between Kohberger and the victims? Kohberger wasn't part of Kaylee's circle. So will the lurid speculation that Kaylee had an OnlyFans page or some sort of secret life worsen? Steve wants to protect Kaylee. Be her mouthpiece, now that she's unable to speak for herself. But Judge Marshall just made that harder. Ahead of Kohberger's extradition from Pennsylvania, Judge Marshall imposed a gag order, stopping the police, investigators, attorneys, and anyone connected to the investigation from talking to the media. The point of this, obviously, is to protect the investigation. But a few days later, without any public process or rationale, she refines the gag order to include the lawyers for the victims' families and the witnesses. Steve doesn't like this one bit. His attorney, Shannon Gray, and 30 news organizations filed an appeal. Steve's concern isn't simply that his First Amendment rights are being restricted, though that is a legitimate issue. It's that he has seen and felt the harm that occurs when there's a vacuum in the narrative. He's seen all the rumors about Kaylee on Facebook, which Olivia, thankfully, was able to quash. He's seen innocent people like Jack DeCour falsely accused until the police cleared him. Now there's no official check on the rumors and speculation about Kaylee and Maddie, other than a trial that could be years away. Kohberger's defense can say anything in the courtroom, and Steve is helpless to speak out about it. All this misinformation will get out there, and then it will just sort of become legend, he said. He's upset. He's so upset that he stays locked in his home office for hours, glued to internet conspiracies, concerned. Christy and Olivia come up with an idea to help him. They decide to take control of a Gonsalves family Facebook page and repurpose it. Now that Kohberger has been arrested, what had originally been set up to field trips will become a supportive online community, not only for the Gonsalves family, but also for other families going through similar experiences. It's a way, at the very least, to tell the world they are thinking and feeling what they are thinking and feeling, a way to keep Kaylee and who she really was alive in the public imagination. Thank you so much for your super chats and the memberships. I will recognize them when we take a little break. Chapter 116. Rochester, New York, January 5th, 2023. It's the mention of the knife sheath Kohberger left at the scene that convinces Christine Cameron that Brian Kohberger and Papa Roger are one of the same. When Kohberger was arrested and she saw his face on the news, She thought that he looked similar to the strange profile picture of Papa Roger. But she told herself, that could just be wishful thinking. Christine also thought about the fact that Elliot Rodger targeted sorority girls. In particular, he targeted the Alpha Phi sorority, Kaylee's sorority. Or is it Alpha Pi? I don't know how to say these sororities. I apologize. Kaylee's sorority. I was like, wait a minute. Kohberger killed all 4 people? 3 of them are girls. 3 of them. He's never had a girlfriend. After the arrest, Christine waits for Papa Roger to resurface on the Facebook page and opine about Kohberger, but he doesn't reappear. And his silence starts a frenzy on the Facebook page. People put up screenshots of his earlier posts about the murders and highlight the parts about Brett Payne's affidavit that jibe just a bit too neatly with them. There's his obsession and the idea that police had found a knife sheath at the crime scene. His opinion that the killer had been in the house 15 minutes and that he'd stopped after killing 4 out of exhaustion. That the house was targeted for a reason. That the killer was not in the circle of friends. That he'd left the neighborhood. Once again, the contents of the Facebook page enter mainstream news. On News Nation, Ashley Banfield does several segments on whether Papa Roger could be Kohberger. Christine and Alina half expect to get a call from the FBI or police. It's not every day that you find you've become the story you're covering. The exposure is helpful, Christine believes, for Alina and herself. It takes the duo a big step closer to building an audience for the true crime podcast they want to host. Vice Media has signed them to an exclusive deal to report on Kohberger. Lucky them. What a lucky break, huh? It's pretty cool. Christine loves that she and Alina are joined at the hip. Both women believe their arrangement works. Alina puts in many more hours than her partner on this Facebook page and the others they started because, unlike Christine, she's home most of the time because she's struggling with medical issues around an injured back. Alina believes that Christine is fully supportive of her predicament. One night when Alina was recovering from a procedure, Christine refused an invitation to go on Ashley Banfield's News Nation show alone to talk about Papa Roger, a sign of how robust their friendship and partnership is. But Alina has often told Christine that she cannot afford to continue to work day and night on the pages if they can't find a way to monetize what they're doing. Christine, who has a full-time job, tells her she understands. Their friendship and partnership are above any sort of monetary thing. I would have put her first, Christine later said, but by then it was too late. Chapter 117. Troy, Idaho, February 2023. He's been out in the snow for hours. There's something deeply therapeutic about wielding a chainsaw through logs again and again. In the 2 months since Kohberger's arrest, Chief Fry has used this quiet time to think and heal. Though even out here on his land, he's never quite able to forget those insane 6 weeks between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve. Thanks to the gag order, he's no longer pressured to speak to the press. Fry has said no to every media request. Geraldo, Katie Couric, Dr. Phil. I turned them all down, he said. Is Geraldo still doing a show? I haven't heard of Geraldo in years. Oh, Chai is Kai? Yeah, look, it is what it is. I clearly wasn't a sorority girl. Okay. For now, it's mostly quiet. Both sides are preparing for the preliminary hearing. At work, he's continuing with the investigation, looking closely at Kohberger's digital footprint and the victims to see if they intersect, to see if they find the motive. Meanwhile, there's a page on Reddit called Justice for Kohberger that the chief follows for humor and with irritation, on which people insist that Kohberger was nowhere near the house on the night in question. Why would he follow that out of humor? Nothing funny about this. I don't like that. Let me read that paragraph again. Meanwhile, there's a page on Reddit called Justice for Kohberger that the chief follows, quote unquote, for humor. And with irritation, on which people insist that Kohberger was nowhere near the house on the night in question, and conclude that Fry's wife, Julie, who was the elected county clerk in November, is somehow controlling Kohberger's court schedule or giving her husband advance notice of hearings. She probably was. You think she wasn't telling her husband when she knew there was going to be a effing hearing on this? Why would he waste his time following a Reddit for humor? Yikes. Screw that, man. The chief adores Julie, his wife of 32 years. When she speaks, she's kind of like E.F. Hutton, he said. So this Reddit nonsense irks him greatly. One conspiracy theorist even concluded that the chief was the murderer, and Kohberger was framed as a scapegoat. Fry looks forward to setting the record straight. As he hoped, Brett Payne's probable cause affidavit definitely squashed some of the police department's worst critics. I don't believe that either. He received a congratulatory letter from retired LAPD Deputy Chief John D. White, the chief investigator in the O.J. Simpson case. Dear Chief Fry, congratulations on a job well done. I told my wife after your first press conference, this chief knows what he's doing. Your handling of the media investigation was a textbook example of how to handle big media cases. Come on! What is this junk? What is this junk? What? This is weird. And the guy who emailed him that this would be the next John Benet Ramsey case turned around and congratulated him as well. You might have got the right guy, he wrote. After all their back and forth, Fry was curious about this critic. Tell me about yourself, Fry replied. He learned the guy was 70 and had been in the oil business in South Dakota before he retired and moved to Florida and had 3 kids. It never ceases to astonish the chief how, when you cut through all the crap, people have more in common with each other than they think. Even Pastor Doug Wilson came to sit in his office recently. The cops had lost their legal battle with Christ Church over the psalm singing arrests, and Christ Church was now suing the city for wrongful arrest and the selective prosecution of Wilson's grandson. But the pastor was extending an olive branch because he'd heard that Fry received death threats from church congregants over the episode. Fry told him yes, he'd received death threats, but not from Wilson's congregants, some of whom were police officers. I don't care who people are. We get paid and we take an oath to serve all people, he told Wilson. Fry wishes that Steve Gonsalves felt able to trust his department more. The chief hates to feel at odds with the family of a murder victim, but he doesn't know how it happened. But he can see that the Gonsalves family feels mistreated by the cops, and they do not trust Thompson and his team either. That's upsetting to him. Their lawyer, Shannon Gray, is vocal in the media. He's demanding meetings and wants to be kept in the loop about whatever the cops hand over to Thompson as part of his case. This is often a problem in murder cases. Victims' families think they are owed information, and by law, they do have some rights. But to protect the investigation, they can't be told everything. It's not a perfect system, and the chief knows that. And he's upset that the Gonsalves family has articulated how upset they are to feel left out. Fry wants to see this case through, but the clock is ticking. He's 54 years old. He believes in change, and elections for county sheriff will be held in November of 2024. That's the one other job. Apart from being police chief, he'd love to have, and by then, he thinks Captain Anthony Dollinger will be ready to replace him. Fry needs to think about the future. So he's taken a moment for himself out in the woods while he can. He learned the hard way. You never know. what's around the corner. Chapter 118, Moscow, Idaho, February 2023. It's around 8 p.m. and pitch black when Ava Wood hears the knock on her front door of her home at 718 Queen Road. She installed a Ring camera after the murders, and she can see a man standing there. He's dressed in a Moscow PD uniform, but since last November, she doesn't trust anything or anyone. She keeps her door locked and waits. He knocks some more. Eventually, she speaks through the camera. "Who are you here for?" He replies, "I'm here for Ava Wood." Ava had 3 new locks and an alarm system installed after the murders, and now she unlocks and opens the door. He hands her an envelope and speaks in a clipped, formal voice. "You're being subpoenaed for the state of Idaho versus Brian Koberger. Preliminary hearing in June." Ava thinks her legs might give way. She starts to shake. She has never been subpoenaed before. "This is the Brian Koberger case," she asks. "Who is it from?" The officer answers, "The defense, Ann Taylor." "The defense? Do I have to show up?" she asks. "Yes," he tells her. "It's illegal to disobey." As soon as he's gone, Ava slams the door and in tears phones her parents. Luckily, her dad is a lawyer who specializes in bad faith litigation. He advises her to phone Thompson's office and let them know that she has been contacted. She speaks to Stacy Osterberg, Thompson's assistant, who suggests she should find out what Taylor wants. So in March, Ava and her dad do a Zoom with Taylor. On the call, Taylor homes in on something Ava told the police on the day of the murders. On Friday, October 14th at 1 a.m., she'd heard someone climb up the metal steps to her apartment, which was across from 1122 King Road, and try the door. "You could hear the jingle of my doorknob. It's a finicky doorknob," she said. But the door stayed closed because Ava had put in a deadbolt during her junior year. She told police what she now tells Taylor. At the time, she'd looked on Snapchat to see if any of her friends were in the area, saw one, Mason Bangman, and texted him to see if he had just tried to let himself in. "No," he said. So Ava asked him to check the street. She watched through her bedroom window as Mason and a couple friends walked into view. He texted Ava he couldn't see anyone. So Ava went to sleep. She didn't think anything more about it. Until Xana, Ethan, Kaylee, and Maddie were murdered in the house across the street. And then she wondered aloud to the police. Was the murderer the same person who had tried to get into her apartment for weeks earlier? Ann Taylor asks her repeatedly to describe what she can see of the street from her home. Ava says she can see the front door of 1122 King Road and the street leading up to it. Taylor asks her if the police ever got back to her about the October incident. The answer is no. After Koberger was arrested and Ava read the probable cause affidavit, she asked if anyone in law enforcement knew if October 14th was one of the 12 times Koberger's phone had pinged in the King Road area. No one will tell her. It occurs to Ava that if Koberger wasn't in the area on the pre-dawn hours of October 14th, the defense could argue there was another predator running around. But if he was... Ava guesses from Taylor's other questions that the lawyer is looking for holes in the accounts of victims' friends. Taylor asks Ava a lot of questions. How well did I know Maddie, Ethan, Kaylee, and Xana? What kind of people were they? Did the roommates ever fight? Did they leave their house unlocked? Did I ever attend the parties they had? How close was I with Dylan and Bethany? Were we all in the same room at the police station? Did I know anything prior to the police being called or showing up? Did I know anything while sitting outside? When did I find out all 4 of them were dead? Did I have any knowledge of Kaylee or anyone having a stalker? Did I hear anything that night? What did I do the night before? Why was I outside that morning? How did I get wrapped up into this whole situation? Taylor apologizes for putting Ava through this, which is decent, Ava thinks. But Ava, who is back with her parents in California, really does not want to testify. Texts ping back and forth among our friend group. Who else has received subpoenas for the preliminary hearing on June 26th? 2 of Jack DeCour's housemates, including Adam Lauda, the guy in the corner club, received them. So too has Ethan's close friend Peter Elgaraga. He was with Ethan and Xana until the end of the Sig Chi party on November 13th. Unlike Ava, Adam and Peter can't try to contest the summons because of their location. They live in Idaho. In April, court filings show that Bethany was subpoenaed by Taylor. But because Bethany lives in Nevada, it's been agreed she can be interviewed there instead. How is that fair? Ava, the California resident, wonders. She writes to Taylor's office asking if they would at least pay for her travel and accommodation. They will. When she attends graduation in Moscow in mid-May, she keeps thinking that her next trip to Idaho is going to feel a lot more stressful. She's back home in California a few days when she hears the news. She doesn't need to return to Moscow for a preliminary hearing because there won't be one. Brian Koberger has been indicted for the murders by a grand jury. Bill Thompson convened in Moscow. It's secret. All the better for the prosecution, which won't have to show its hand and reveal its witnesses to the defense ahead of a trial. Wow. Let's break that down for a minute. So Ava, you guys remember Ava was in the documentary. She lives across the street. She's the one that came out in the morning and brought a blanket for all the friends. She looked out her window and she saw them all sitting in the road. And she came out there with the blanket for the kids. Northern Light, I want to thank you for sending over 5 memberships. Congratulations to whoever received those. Thank you so much. Sarah Adams, appreciate you taking your time to read. Very grateful. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Hazel Eyes. I appreciate your support. Thank you for being here. This is super interesting, though, because Ava's thing jives. So what I did when all this happened, if you weren't following me at that time, was I went back in the police blotter and I looked at all these incidents that were going on in Moscow. And what I found was an incident just like this, and it could have been Ava's report to the police that someone was trying to get in her apartment. There was another report that I found in the months before the murders where someone had come home and felt like somebody had been in their apartment. There were a lot of weird things going on in Moscow. We've got the knife threat on Paradise Path in September. We've got Ava here in October. And I'll be interested to know if Koberger was there on October 14th. Did we get the dates yet that he was in the area, or just how many times? Oh, I forgot about the panty incident. The panties weren't missing. They were in the cup holder. Yeah. October 14th was when that happened to Ava. I think he was watching all of them. I think they were all in each other's socials. I think he had his eyes on a lot of them. Thank you, Diana. Chapter 119. Emily Allant is already in town for graduation when she gets the email summons from Bill Thompson. He convened a grand jury and she needs to testify. No one can know. She needs to get to the Latah County Courthouse on Sunday evening, when Thompson's team will prepare her for what to expect at the real thing on Monday morning. Hunter Johnson received the same summons. The only people they tell are their moms, Karen and Jessica, who are with them for graduation. Emily has an immediate problem. She has nothing to wear other than her graduation dress. So Jessica Hunter's mother takes her to Target, where she purchases a respectable pair of pants. It's hard, if not possible, to relax through graduation events, knowing what lies ahead. Imagine finally graduating college, and you have to sit through your college commencements and think about testifying in front of a grand jury after for the murders of your friends. As she walks into the courthouse on Sunday evening, Emily glances at a big steel door to the jail. She shudders. Kohberger is down there. She tries to push him from her mind. She and Hunter are separated for their practice sessions. Emily's interlocutor is Ashley Jennings. Emily is nervous answering the questions. There are times when she screws up and starts over. The next morning, she and Hunter find that it's not as easy as they'd hope to slip away from their friends who are pre-gaming. We've got breakfast plans with our families, they lie. Oh, so you do a breakfast shot first, is the reply. That puts Emily on the spot. Nothing is going to induce her to drink. Too much is at stake. She and Hunter are driving 5 minutes from the courthouse when a member of Thompson's team texts them an alert. There's media outside. Use the side door. So somehow the media found out that there was a grand jury convening. Interesting. When Emily does find herself in front of a jury, she is grateful for the preparation. It's intimidating, but she can do it. They ask the exact same questions she just rehearsed, and she answers them smoothly. Tell us about the events of November 13th. She and Hunter don't know what else Thompson called for the grand jury, but Emily suspects that Dylan and Bethany may have testified on Zoom. She doesn't see any other girl around campus when she and Hunter return to their friends. She doesn't see either girl around campus when she and Hunter return to their friends, then ultimately walk for graduation with their respective classes. All she knows is that on May 17th, it is announced that Brian Kohberger has been formally indicted by a grand jury for the murders of Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee, which means there will be no preliminary hearing. Emily has played her part. I'll call you when I need you, but meanwhile, I want you to get on with your lives. That was Bill Thompson's parting message to Emily and Hunter when they headed back to Boise. But for Emily, returning to normality is a struggle. After the murders, she struggles to focus. She worries that her GPA will not be good enough for her to get into her physical therapy program. So she ends up not applying. She's lost sight of her goals. She feels adrift, no longer the person she was before the murders. Hunter is an athletics coach at Centennial High School in Boise, so he at least has structure in his life. That is really cool. I could see him being really good working with kids, like especially after what he's been through. I think Hunter is going to go on to really change some lives. Like, I think I don't know, I just have that feeling about him. Like, I get that vibe that he's going to go on and really, change people's lives and be able to help people. Emily takes a series of part-time jobs and eventually trains to be a dental hygienist. But she knows deep down that she needs to address the trauma of November 13th. She needs to try to get past it. She starts going to counseling and digging deep, learning to be alone, even though, thanks to Hunter, she seldom is. Her doctor recommended she try eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing therapy. EMDR. But when she runs this past Thompson's team, they warn her that this would likely disqualify any testimony she gives at trial because EMDR can affect memory. Emily isn't going to risk that, even though a trial could be many months away. So these people even had to put the type of therapy they wanted to get afterwards on hold because of the trial, which ended up not happening. right? So you can see how horrible it would be to deal with that. Welcome in if you're new here. Thank you. I'm a victim. Welcome in. Emily isn't going to risk that, even though a trial could be many months away. I don't want to testify, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes, she says. She wants to see this through. She wants to get justice for Xana, Ethan, Kaylee, and Maddie. Then, and only then, she will do the therapy. Chapter 120, Moscow, Idaho, May 22nd, 2023. Brian Koberger keeps his eyes forward, fixed on District Judge John Judge, who is taking over the case after the indictment. He answers yes, over and over, when the judge asks him if he understands the charges and the penalty for each one. If found guilty, Koberger faces either life imprisonment or the death penalty for each of the 4 murders. Miss Taylor, the judge says, is Mr. Koberger prepared to plead to these charges? She rises and answers, Your Honor, we will be standing silent. The judge pauses. Because Mr. Koberger is standing silent, he says, I'm going to enter not guilty pleas on each charge. If John Judge is surprised, he doesn't show it. But standing silent is not something that happens often. Many suspects don't even know there is an option, besides pleading either guilty or not guilty. Even local attorney Mike Pattinson wasn't aware of this option. But Ann Taylor is a very practiced criminal lawyer, and Brian Koberger knows more about criminal law than your average suspect. There are 2 reasons, media commentators say, that someone has said he understands the charges and issues and would stand silent. The first is if there are ongoing negotiations around a plea deal. Few people believe that that is the case here. Everything seems to indicate that Koberger wants his moment of fame. The second has to do with public perception. In high-profile trials, defendants might want to avoid sparking further public outrage by saying, not guilty. It's a nuance that likely occurs only to someone who thinks and cares about the PR ramifications of the court proceedings. Brian Koberger, it is reported, cares greatly about the PR ramifications of his case. He watches TV coverage of it as much as he can in his jail cell. Steve Gonsalves complains publicly and often about Koberger's privileges. We've got to get this guy. I don't want him ever getting vegan meals, his own TV, his own phone, video conferencing with his mother, he said. I got family members that are military. They come home all messed up in the head. All they get is the VA. And this is how we treat our murderers? Our mass murderers that kill people? Vegan meals? TV? Room and board? It's absolutely outrageous, Steve thinks. But so much about the legal process is. Most people have no idea how frustrating it is to be in his shoes. Most people don't think about how little agency a murder victim's parents have. But on his family's Facebook page, they're starting to hear from other victims' parents who say they wish they'd been more proactive and involved in their children's cases. He's getting messages of support from families all over the world. It's hard to juggle his day job doing IT at the hospital and all this, but curating the page brings the Gonsalves family together. It gives Christy purpose on her down days. The encouragement spurs him on. Chapter 121, Moscow, Idaho, Spring 2023. A half-mile away from Koberger's jail cell, in his office on Jackson Street, Church Christ pastor Doug Wilson closely follows developments in the Koberger case and the implications for his family, especially his grandson Rory and his conviction for illegally affixing a sticker to a pole. This is just a personal theory, connecting dots, he said. I think the judge, Marshall, did not want to throw the Moscow officials under the bus by finding in favor of Rory, because that would make the cops look bad. That would make the city of Moscow look bad in the middle of this. His argument might not have gotten much traction with anyone other than his own congregants if it weren't for the fact that after Koberger was arrested, Marshall played into his hands by imposing the controversial gag order on the victims' families' lawyers. When 30 media organizations and the Gonsalves attorney, Shannon Gray, filed appeals against Marshall's gag order, Wilson felt deeply gratified. Now he isn't the only one who thinks Marshall has obstructed people's First Amendment rights. This could be very helpful to Rory's case, he thinks. Just not to put too fine a point on it, he said. But Judge Marshall was the one who put the gag order on them, and she was the same person who excluded my grandson's defense. So it's the same. This is a small town. We're talking about the same people. Wilson hoped that, given the public pressure, Marshall's supervisor, District Judge John Judge, would be sympathetic to Rory's appeal. We had heard rumors, he said, that John Judge was not happy with the city of Moscow. But it's May, and suddenly the district judge is under pressure of his own, because following the grand jury indictment, he's taking over Brian Koberger's case. It's by far the biggest one of his career, most of which he spent as a lawyer in private practice. Later that spring, John Judge denies Rory's appeal. Doug Wilson is annoyed but unsurprised. He thinks that Judge, like Marshall, has no interest in issuing a ruling that could further harm the reputation of the Moscow PD in the wake of the murders. John Judge is from the same network as all the local judges and lawyers. He's a UI law graduate, just like Bill Thompson, Megan Marshall, Ann Taylor, and even Kathy Mabutt, the coroner. Wilson, now clear in his own mind that whatever happens in this case has a direct bearing on Rory's, intends to fight on. The Wilsons will appeal Rory's case all the way to the Idaho Supreme Court. They will sue in federal court, too. They will spend whatever it takes. They've already surpassed 6 figures. If Koberger is acquitted, let's say he's acquitted because of a botched handling of evidence, then our allegation that the cops botched this case is the second verse, Wilson said. But he added, if it comes out that he was caught and he's convicted because of sterling police work, and we all applaud it, including us, we would applaud it, then our allegation that the cops were Keystone cops mishandling all of this becomes more of an uphill climb. It's obviously related any way you go. So whatever happens, Wilson will be watching very closely. The way he sees it, the fate of his grandson to some degree, his church hang in the balance. Chapter 122. Moscow, Idaho, May 12th, 2023. It's the Friday before graduation and the eve of the 6-month anniversary of the murders. It's also a few days before the celebration of the first Maddie May Day. May 25th, Maddie's birthday, will now be an annual holiday for Maddie's aunts, Katie and Rachel, helped create. They've bought a domain name, built a website, and extended an invitation to all. Join us in continuing Maddie's mission by completing random acts of kindness. We can't wait to hear the stories that emerge as we all remember Maddie on this day and every day. Deedle, as Maddie called her paternal grandmother, Kim Cheeley, is proud of her daughters for coming up with the idea. She's excited to go to Moscow that evening with the Laramies and her son Ben Mogan and other family members to spread the word about Maddie May Day. She's got cookies and a note about the new holiday for the Moscow police officers and the university staff. We wanted to thank the police department, she said. I feel like they've done an amazing job keeping their cards close to their chest and going about their business and doing what they had to do. I know that you're not supposed to say this out loud, but I feel they have their man. When she arrives at the police station, gifts in hands, various officers come in and out of the room as she shares the cookies. Deedle is gratified. Until that is, nearly 2 weeks later, on May 25th, Maddie's actual birthday. On that day, she reads in the Idaho statement that the families of Maddie Mogan and Kaylee Gonsalves have filed tort claims notices with the city of Moscow, the University of Idaho, the Idaho State Police, and possibly, it's suggested but not confirmed, WSU. The paper quotes the Gonsalves' lawyer, Shannon Gray, explaining that the families have filed, as legally required, within 6 months of the original incident to reserve their right to sue. They haven't sued yet, but they might in the future. Smart on them, right? You never know. You never know what you're going to find out after the fact. Filing a tort claims notice is really just a safeguard, Gray tells ABC News. It's a safeguard to protect the interests of the families, the victims, and really the whole community around. Because if something goes wrong or was done improperly, then someone is held accountable for that. In May, Steve phones Stacy Chapin to tell her ahead of time that he's filing the tort against the cops and university. He explains this is nothing against you, and he means it. It isn't even against the police in his mind. He's creating a layer of protection for Kaylee and Maddie. It isn't personal. Deedle is devastated. It broke my heart, she later said. She is mortified as she reads on and discovers that the Gonsalves family filed theirs on May 2nd and 3rd, but the, quote, Mogan family filed on May 11th, the day before she showed up at the Moscow police station with her basket of cookies. The Mogan family designation wrongly insinuates she had a part in this. She wants to set the record straight. She would never consider suing the police or the university. That is not us, she said. We've been so thankful to the university, to the police department, and we have been treated like royalty through this whole thing. But Kim doesn't want to alienate Karen and Scott Laramie. During Maddie's short life, Deedle had consistent, unfettered access to Maddie because Karen and Scott allowed it. Ben was made to feel welcome in their home. Even though he still had parental rights, things could have been a lot less easy had Karen and Scott not been so generous and welcoming. What good people. I love Karen, she said. We stayed really close for Maddie's sake. And Scott, too. I really, really love both of them. Nervously, she phones Bill Thompson's office and asks if she is bound by the gag order. She is not. Then she calls the statesman. She speaks to an editor and tries to explain she'd like to be separated from the Mogan family in future reporting. But she doesn't want to create a story about a fracture in the family. So when the editor asks her if there is an issue, Deedle treads carefully. Well, going forward, could we just make it clear who you're talking about? That's all. She hangs up and wishes it were all much less complicated. Maddie was such an angel of a person. Deedle has added an angel wing in her memory to the necklace Maddie ordered for her on Etsy that had both their names. Sweet. She doesn't get why the Gonsalves family seems to be making so many decisions for Maddie's family. She's puzzled about why Maddie's ashes are on their mantelpiece alongside Kaylee's. But she also knows it's what Karen wants. Deedle thinks if that's the case, then so be it. Karen has lost her only child, and poor Karen had also lost her mother in a car accident when she herself was barely an adult. How sad. So whatever Karen wants, Deedle will roll with it. So Maddie's mom lost her mom when she was an older teen to a car accident. Wow. Chapter 123, Moscow, Idaho, August 1st, 2023. It's over 100 degrees when Jim and Stacy arrive to the UI campus. They are there to drop off Maisie and Hunter for the start of the fall semester. But what they haven't told their children, because they don't want to upset them, is that after they've settled them in, they have another stop to make. Opposite the Kibbe Dome, in a nondescript building that has no AC and no electricity, is everything Ethan left behind at 1122 King Road. Jim is reluctant to go, but Stacy insists. Damn it, I'm going to get my kids' stuff. Dean Blaine Eccles has thought long and hard about how to make the hideous experience as easy as possible for all the parents. He's got bottled water and nitrile gloves on hand. He and a team have staged and divided the campus building to mirror the rooms of the King Road house. We had old desks, and we brought in tables and staged it kind of like a garage sale, Eccles said. We didn't want them to worry about opening boxes and being surprised. What does that mean? Why would the families be surprised to see their own kids' stuff? Why would they set up their stuff and mimic? That's weird to me. Eccles has deliberately made sure that all the families come on separate days. And he has security in place just in case. The Chapins walk through a room labeled kitchen. Oh, I see. They didn't know whose stuff was whose. So they set it out so that they could get their kids' things. They had no way of knowing whose was what. Holy fuck. The Chapins walk through a room labeled kitchen to see if there's anything of Ethan's in there. Then they go into a room marked 4, which contains the belongings of Xana and Ethan. Oh, fuck. Some of Ethan's stuff is spattered with blood. It's upsetting to see it. Unsurprisingly, given the heat, the building smells rank. It was hell. I will not lie. It was hell, Stacy said later. But she takes what she needs. She'll put the furniture in storage unit she and Jim have kept in Moscow. And she brings the clothes back with her to Priest Lake, where she washes them and puts them away in the basement, beside Ethan's ashes. They don't need to overthink it now, but one day, she knows when they're ready, Maisie, Hunter, and she and Jim will want to choose some pieces of Ethan's life to hold on to. Going through to Ethan's stuff is only one part of today's bittersweet experience. Ahead of the trial, slated for October, just 2 months away, the court released 1122 King Road, meaning both the defense and prosecution teams have no further use for it in terms of evidence. Soon after the murders, the owner gave the house to the university, leaving it up to UI to decide its fate. In February, the school announced the house would be torn down. The Chapins are fervently in favor of the house being demolished as soon as possible. Hunter can see it from his bedroom window at Sig Chai. So many of Xana and Ethan's close friends like Josie and Ava. Steve and Jim believe no one needs to dwell on the horrific events of November 13th and that the house is a horrible reminder. It needs to go, Stacy said, a position reflecting their larger, laissez-faire view of the unfolding judicial process. They don't want to spend a second thinking about Kohberger or a trial or any of the legal process beyond what they gleaned from Bill Thompson, whose staff phones regularly to update them. Over coffee in Le Connor one morning in March, as they watched the sunrise and, like every day, wiped away their tears, Stacy and Jim came to the decision it was time to look forward, not back. Why would I want to waste my time looking at him, Stacy said, referring to Kohberger. She has, for now at least, no intention of showing up at any of the hearings or in the future at his trial. Nothing is bringing Ethan back. Out of devastation, the Chapins want to create something positive. To Stacy, that's The Boy Who Wore Blue, a children's book she wrote about Ethan with illustrations by Lana Lee. In June, she and Jim travel to New York and she appears on the Today Show. The book profits will go to the couple's nonprofit foundation, Ethan's Smile, and a new variety of tulip, Skagit County farmers have named in Ethan's honor. The foundation plans to award scholarships to high schoolers applying to college. While the Chapins have no interest in the judicial process or the efficiency of the system, Steve Gonsalves is on a mission. He asks journalists and local sources in the FBI to help him with research. And on the Gonsalves family Facebook page, he refers to himself as a private investigator. From the data Steve receives, he becomes increasingly sure that Maddie was the target. And as far as Steve can see, Kohberger liked Maddie's photos on social media. He liked Kaylee's too, but always in joint photos with Maddie. He wants to figure out how Kohberger appeared to know the layout of the King Road house before entering it on November 13th. So he strenuously objects in July when the university announces its plans to demolish the 1122 King Road house quickly. Technology changes so fast, he said. So you never know if they discover some new scan or some kind of phone technology or whatever, and they want to go back in there and retrace steps. He has a point. Months down the road, there will be a back and forth between prosecutors and Kohberger's defense debating the accuracy of the model of the house to be used at trial. Shannon Gray puts out a statement from the Gonsalveses to the effect and says that the Kernodles and the Mogans are united on this point. Dean Eccles understands their frustration over the house, but his hands are tied. University administrators are worried that the house is not safe. Investigators tore out pieces of walls and floors, and there are wires hanging out. And it's costing the school around $600 a day to pay for security. It's a liability. Oh, I'm sure it's a finished basement. They have they have several homes. They have a lake house. They have their regular house. I'm sure it's, did you see the garage where they're keeping Ethan's Jeep? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they have a nice special place where Ethan is. Can't imagine anything other than that. I think it's just too hard for them to have it in front of them all the time. You know what I mean? And I get that. Like when they want to take their time to, focus on what's happened, it must be hard for it to be a constant reminder. So I think when they want to focus on what's happened, they go downstairs and they have their private moments. I respect that. Because of the Gonsalves' family public opposition to the demolition, Eccles is concerned there might be some sort of disruption when they arrive on campus to pick up Kaylee's belongings in August. I absolutely worried that Shannon Gray was going to get media there and try to make this a big deal, Eccles said later. But the Gonsalves family comes quietly, without Gray and without drama. They take their time looking through Kaylee's things. And here these people are expecting them to be all, oppositional and stuff. Eccles feels for them. I felt I had a really good relationship with them for the most part, he said. In person, he senses they are just decent people trying to grieve the loss of their daughter and advocate for her in the best way they know how. Of course they are, Eccles. Sorry, not everybody kisses your ass on the UI campus. By the end of August, all 4 victims' families have gone through the stuff. The Kernodles do it remotely. Steve Gonsalves is bracing for the worst, but out of the blue, the university announces that the demolition is postponed. This is not entirely due to the pressure from the Gonsalves family. It is because of something that will come to frustrate Steve even more than the planned demolition. It's because the trial date has changed. Chapter 124, Moscow, Idaho, August 18th, 2023. Kohberger is clean-shaven, hair neatly trimmed, and dressed in a white shirt, striped tie, and gray jacket. He enters the courtroom through the side door and takes his seat at the defendant's table, where he and Ann Taylor appear to chat easily, too easily, almost as if they are discussing the weather. Sitting in the gallery, Christy stares at him. She wants him to look at her. Make eye contact. Her sister, Tammy Boots, really wants him to look over. Tammy is wearing a black t-shirt on which is emblazoned in yellow and white lettering, hashtag Justice for Kaylee, Idaho House Bill 186, shots fired. A few months earlier, the Idaho House of Representatives passed a law that would effectively bring back the firing squad as a means of execution if state officials were unable to obtain the chemicals needed to carry out a lethal injection. Tammy's t-shirt, a photograph of her wearing, is later posted on the Gonsalves family Facebook page with the caption, "Damn, it feels good to be a gangster." It is a reminder that Bill Thompson has put the death penalty on the table. If Kohberger sees the t-shirt, or his family, he doesn't react. Even when the defense's first expert witness in the hearing talks about the science of investigative genetic genealogy, Kohberger's expression stays fixed. His attorneys will later argue in court papers that it's due to his autism spectrum disorder diagnosis, and they will claim it will it could hurt a jury's perception of him. The media's pool camera keeps zooming in on him, as if seeking something, anything, but it gets nothing. In a preview of what may come at trial, depending on what the judge allows in, Taylor steers the focus of the DNA found on the knife sheath. She wants the state to hand over to her the precise IgG methodology that was used to construct Kohberger's family tree. Discovery that the state's lawyers say they don't have. And even if they did, they argue the issue is moot because they have Kohberger's DNA from a cheek swab, and it's an exact match for the DNA on the knife sheath. The IgG lab work simply gave them a lead. Which is so interesting to me because that just seems so wrong. In some ways, you know, like the FBI can do whatever they want. They can run whatever kind of testing they want. They can go through back doors. They can, you know, do stuff like that. But then they don't have to show the proof because that's where the FBI is untouchable. They are. And that's why I stand by the fact that I do believe they followed Kohberger across the country. I do believe that they had a plane following him. I do believe they had him on their radar. And I don't think they'll ever admit it because why would the FBI ever in a million years give away their tactics? Like, yeah, well, that's what we do. I mean, they're not going to do that. So there's some things that we're never going to know just because of the FBI will never tell us. So that's that. All right, chapter 124, Moscow, Idaho, August 18th, 2023. Oh, we already read that. My bad. Where are we? See, this is what happens when I give commentary. I lose my spot. Okay, for the next 2.5 hours, the courtroom becomes Taylor's theater. At least that's how Steve sees it. Thompson seems to have little to ask or say. Taylor calls 3 expert witnesses and peppers them with questions about the complexity of science behind creating a family tree from trace DNA. One of them, as far as Steve can see, has no right to call herself an expert at all. How are you allowing her to become an expert on the stand and not even cross-examine her? He complains privately afterwards. The experts discuss the room for error and also the issue of whether online genetic databases were accessed by law enforcement without authorization, which could lead to legal challenges down the line. Who thinks that could still be a problem in the future? Do you think that it could be a problem in the future, even though he's, taken this plea? Let's say he gets sentenced to life. Do you think that this genetic genealogy, as things progress, that something in the future, even if it's 20, 30 years from now, that may come up? I'm out of coffee, but I have water. We're on chapter 125 almost, by the way. When you look at the two lawyers battling, it almost doesn't seem like a fair fight. Thompson is retirement age and looks it. Taylor's in her late 50s, young looking, blonde. She's quick on her feet and she's aggressive. She asked the judge, for instance, to toss out the indictment based on numerous far-fetched sounding irregularities surrounding the grand jury process. She argues that too few jurors were called, 32 instead of 45, in violation of state statute. That the instructions that were given were inaccurate, even that the questionnaires they received were misnumbered. A former classmate of hers, Moscow lawyer Mike Patterson, observed that part of Taylor's job was simply to buy Kohberger time. It's a death penalty case. So when the disappointing, if predictable, news that Kohberger is waiving his right to a speedy trial comes down the pike 5 days later on August 23rd, Steve is prepared. It's a reminder, Steve says, that it's essential that the Gonsalves family is there in the courtroom for every single hearing. He has so little control over the course of justice that his presence in that room, staring at the defendant, feels like the only powerful thing he can do. It's the only time he feels he's truly doing anything proactive for Kaylee and Maddie. Chapter 125, LaConner, Washington, November 13th, 2023. It's the 1-year anniversary of the death of their beloved child. Jim, Stacy, Hunter, and Maisie Chapin, dressed in a black tie, are welcoming their guests. Over glasses of wine in the early summer, Jim and Stacy thought very hard what they wanted to do on this day. They wanted the evening to be upbeat, positive, celebratory even. They wanted to raise money for their foundation, Ethan's Smile. They wanted it to be intimate and private. There are more media requests flooding in than ever, partly because of the anniversary, but also because Stacy's insistence on keeping the focus of Ethan's story away from the lurid end is becoming a focus in itself. In October, the New York Times covered her weekend visit to Orlando, Florida for CrimeCon, which billed itself as, quote, the world's #1 event for true crime and mystery. Stacy had gone to the convention as part of a panel of victims' parents who, like her and Jim, were starting foundations as their children's legacies. And that's where I disagree with CrimeCon inviting victims. I don't think CrimeCon, which is like a fan base true crime convention, should include victims' families. That's weird to me. I feel like they're exploiting these families, and I don't like it. So therefore, I don't support CrimeCon because I don't like that. It didn't used to be that way. It's gross. Once there, she saw that a professor from Alabama was offering a seminar purporting to be a, quote, forensic analysis of Ethan's murder. Stacy tried to attend, but walked out after a few minutes. Like, why would they have a forensic overview on Ethan Chapin's murder with his mom there to present? Those people clearly lack the common sense and the empathy. Why would you even do that? Why would you have that? Why would you invite her there and then have a forensic guy, going over Ethan's murder when we didn't even have many details? I find that to be so disrespectful and gross. It actually makes me mad. Stacy tried to attend, but walked out after a few minutes. After some deliberation, she returned to the packed seminar near the end of the session. She stood up at the mic during the Q&A. My name is Stacy Chapin, and I'm Ethan's mom, she said. The room of 3,200 people hushed. 3,200 people. That's 3,200 people sitting there listening to a seminar about her son's murder. The room of 3,200 people hushed, then broke into loud applause. Her voice quavering with emotion, Stacy pressed on, explaining that she hadn't watched the presentation, but had a message for the room. In their fascination with crime, they should not forget the victims. These were 4 of the greatest kids, and all of the great things that you read about them are legitimately true. Don't forget these kids. They were amazing, amazing kids in the prime of their life. The moment goes viral on Fox News. Whether she wants to do this or not, through her steady insistence that people focus on Ethan's life and not his death, Stacy Chapin is developing a brand, iconic supermom. But now, on the 1-year anniversary of Ethan's death, she and Jim want a press-free evening. They accept an offer from a friend and neighbor in LaConner, Jeff Hellam, to use his Hellam's Vineyard wine shop and a bar for a party. As Stacy warms to the idea, she realizes she doesn't want just any party. If they're going to do this, they're really going to do this. The dress code is going to be black tie. She thinks hard about a guest list. Of course, Hunter and Maisie will also be there. Of course, they will ask their close family friends like Susan DeVries and her cousins Kathleen and Stuart and the PR exec who acted as their gatekeeper, and Melissa and Jeff and all the people who helped with the foundation. Dean Eccles sends 2 of his team. There are also the people who have become part of the Chapins' growing family because of the tragedy. One is Jasmine Kernodle, Xana's big sister, of whom Stacy feels increasingly protective. Jasmine has moved to Seattle with her boyfriend, Pat. But because Jeff is in Arizona, Stacy worries that Jasmine can feel alone at times. Stacy wants to support her. Dude, Stacy Chapin is like one of the most giving people. Wow, she is really an amazing person. She's taken Jasmine under her wing. I think that's really sweet considering Ethan and Xana, and that way Jazzy can stay close to Hunter and Maisie. You know, it's just kind of nice. She's a nice woman. Selfless. The other person Stacy invites to Moscow is the Moscow Police Chief James Fry. Even as she dresses for the evening in a long navy gown, Stacy isn't sure that the chief will be able to make it. After all, there's an anniversary vigil going on the UI campus, and La Conner is a 6-hour drive from Moscow. But as everyone sips the fine wines, Chief Fry walks in quietly, his son JD beside him. During her remarks, Stacy asks the room to acknowledge him. "We just cannot thank you enough for the work you have done to right this atrocity, and we can't wait for it to be over so that we can talk about some of what we know and what some of us really know." The chief smiles. The Chapins, like Michelle Wederick, Joseph's mom, and Chrissy Dove, Sarah Park's sister, are his kind of people. "We all have different personalities. Some of us are always going to take the bad and make good out of it," he later said. "And then there's people who take the bad and try to capitalize on it. And then there's people who take the bad and let it destroy them. I think Stacy, the Chapins, look what they have already done. 33 scholarships, over 55,000 given to kids." He added, "After what happened to them, that's extraordinary." Chapter 126, Rathdrum, Idaho, November 13th, 2023. On the 1-year anniversary of Kaylee's murder, the Gonsalveses don't go to the vigil in Moscow. Instead, they sit in their living room on their black leather couch, familiar now to America's many true crime sleuths, and give TV interviews about Kaylee and their frustration with the excruciatingly slow and opaque legal path to justice. "We said, gather it up. We'll work with investigators and turn this around," Steve tells News Nation. He repeats how, because nobody knows her like her brother and sister. And they were ahead of investigators on the grub truck video and reaching out to Kaylee and Maddie's driver. "We went from being victims and became actively involved, and that could make a difference," Steve said. They tell their interviewers that they do have some proof that their advocacy matters. For one thing, 1122 King Road is still standing, and on October 31st, the FBI re-entered the home to create a new 3D map of the crime scene. Because of the gag order, it is not clear to the public what drove the agency to do this. But it's an undeniable win for the Gonsalves family. "I knew in my heart what was best for those girls and Ethan. And I knew what was best was to keep the house around until they did more," Steve tells News Nation's Brian Etten. There will be a point when I'll be like, let it go. But that isn't now. The family shifts focus to another bone of contention: Koberger's attire for court hearings. Once John Judge took over the case, he granted Ann Taylor's request to allow her client to appear in court, unshackled and wearing a suit. "He looks like a business executive," Christy explodes. "According to her research, I've never seen another murderer, or whatever he is at this point, in a case not in handcuffs, not in shackles, one or the other, or both, and in orange. The absence of prison clothing is infuriating. It makes me sick that he gets to sit there in his suit, and he sits there and he taps his hands, he rocks back and forth," she tells Enton. "Why is he sitting there in the judge chair with a fresh haircut?" Bill Thompson explains to the family via Gray that the judge allowed this out of caution. If the defense argues, successfully, that Koberger has been made to look guilty on TV screens around the world before he appears in front of a jury, it could be grounds for an appeal. But Steve assumes that with a case that's this high profile, there will be an appeal regardless. Steve knows there's a good chance that Ann Taylor will argue, due to the constant local media coverage of the case, that Koberger will not be able to get an impartial jury in Moscow, and the trial should be moved. If it is moved, Boise, nearly 300 miles away, would be the most likely venue. How is that fair to the victims' families? Just seems wrong, he says, that an outsider comes here, does crime here, without the community having a voice and determining how justice plays out. That's why Steve chooses to be proactive. I want BK to look back and say, if there was one thing that really brought me down, it was messing with Kaylee's family. They wouldn't let up, Steve said. I would never want him to get away with it. He's toying with the idea of pursuing a federal case based on Koberger having crossed so many state lines to commit the murders. Sources at the FBI have told him that this might be a possibility. Steve knows it's a long shot, but he's going to explore every avenue. For the Gonsalves family, nothing is off the table. Our motto was don't be victims. Don't ever be a victim. I'm going to take a brief 5-minute break. I'm going to use the facilities and I will be back in 5. And then we're going to pick up on the demolition of the house. We are on page 395 out of 435. 395 out of 435. We're almost done, you guys. Hey, Esther. It's good to see you. Hey, Miss North. Hey, Gina F. Have there been any updates about giving? I don't know. No, I heard they wanted to give the GoFundMe things back. I think they should just keep it. That's what I think they should do. But I'll be back in 5 minutes, guys. Don't go nowhere. Stay right here. I'll be right back. All right. I'm back. Hopefully you guys are still with me. Steve, the sister was writing a book and Ramsden was helping, but I doubt Ramsden would let anyone get the scoop on her first. Yeah, I don't think that Ramsden is helping, like, give information for the book with the sister. She's probably helping her actually with format and things like that is how I took it. Not necessarily with information. Because I agree with you, Miss North. I think she's going to be all over this herself. 100%. All right, Chapter 127, Moscow, Idaho, December 28th, 2023. Demolition Day is finally here, despite the Gonsalves' best efforts. Last night, Shannon Gray released a statement from the Gonsalves family with the headline, "Please stop the demolition of the King Road home." "We feel that the University of Idaho and the court has put us in a horrible position to have to voice our opinions," the statement read. "We all along have just wanted the King Road home to not be demolished until after the trial, and for us to have a trial date so that we can look forward to justice being served. Is that really too much to ask?" The Chapins have not commented, nor has Ben Mogan. But Christy and Steve are not ready to so easily say goodbye to the last place Kaylee had been on this earth. Behind the scenes, Olivia, who's back in California and due to give birth to her fourth child shortly, has been trying to get her parents to back down and let it go. "This is not the hill you want to die on," she told them. "We will have more important battles." On the other hand, Alina Smith, the co-founder of the University of Idaho Case Discussion Facebook page, goes to great effort to join the protest. She's flown in from Texas, arriving at 1122 King Road long before dawn. But she cannot get close to the house. There's police tape everywhere. They had it so blocked off over there that nobody could get through, she said. And other than the media, there's no one around, not even protesters. They put warnings out a good week or so ahead of time on these little billboards everywhere that if you think you're going to show up and protest, we're going to arrest you on the spot, she said. They scared everyone away. So they put little signs up in Moscow saying if you showed up at the house to protest the demolition, they were going to be arresting you on the spot. That seems like a violation of your First Amendment rights. That's weird. The demolition is scheduled for 7 a.m., but the crew starts 2 hours early. By the time the sun is up, the house is in pieces on the ground. Christine, the other co-founder of the Facebook page, is back in Rochester, New York. She's annoyed that she can't fly to Moscow to watch and take a video of the demolition with Alina, but she's got her family to deal with over the holidays. Earlier in the month, the university stated for the third time that it planned to knock down the house on December 29th. While the students were home for the holidays. UI President Scott Green told the Idaho Statesman, "While we appreciate the emotional connection some family members of the victims may have to this house, it is time for its removal and to allow the collective healing of our community continue." That quote really stung, Olivia said. Green's stance raised the demolition debate to a fever pitch. Members of the Facebook page are split, some for, some against. Sympathizers with students who are distressed by the sight of the house debate who favor preserving the premises for potential use in the trial. In the recent trial of South Carolina lawyer Alex Murdaugh, the jury visited the family plantation where Murdaugh's wife and son had been found murdered. On December 20th, Christine and Alina did a TV segment with News Nation's Ashley Banfield to talk about the controversy around the demolition. And when Alina gets to Moscow, she tells Christine that the trip is proving to be a good PR for the page. I don't know why they're focusing so much on this Facebook page and these girls, like, fame. It's kind of weird to me. She's done a bunch of press, and she's met fellow cyber sleuth Olivia Vitale, the creator of Chronicles of Olivia on TikTok. Olivia was the person to whom the Gonsalves family gave their first in-depth interview a year earlier. Alina tells Christine, I think we have an opportunity with her. She's like, she didn't know half the stuff that you and I know. She's so interested in us. Christine is excited to learn this because she thinks that with all the work her and Alina have put into launching their podcast series, they are nearly ready. On December 8th, she posted on the Facebook page a profile of Alina and her captioned, Your lovely administrators want you to know that our first podcast is in the works. Enjoy your weekend, but don't cause Alina and I to drink too much. By now, Christine has refined their podcast concept. 2 sleuths, 1 crime. Alina, however, returns to Texas to bad news. Her husband has lost his job of 20 years. Something is going to have to change, she thinks. Why do we care about this? I don't even know who Alina is, Zoe. Unlike Christine, Alina doesn't have a paying job. Running the Facebook page and 9 others like it has been all-consuming for her. But she's got 3 kids, 1 with a disability, and she needs to carry her family while her husband gets back on his feet. She'll look for the right opportunity. Christine, she's sure, will understand. Chapter 128, Moscow, Idaho, February 28th, 2024. Steve is praying as he takes his seat in the gallery of the courthouse. Let's get a date. Let's get a date. To the Gonsalves family, attempting to set the trial date is beginning to feel like Groundhog Day. Ann Taylor seems to be winning every tactical battle. Each time, she presents a consistent visual. Yeah, I just said visual. Visual. Koberger sits up front, suited and stone-faced, next to Taylor and her colleague Alyssa Massoth, as the defense attorneys debate what evidence might or might not be admissible at trial. Each time, Taylor is the star of the show. She's on her feet talking and raising questions more often than any other lawyer in the room. Thompson barely says anything. And the judge, as far as Steve can see, bends over backwards to accommodate Taylor. Last month, Steve, Christy, and Shannon finally held an in-person meeting with Bill Thompson and his team, and they vented their frustrations about the lack of progress. We beat up on Thompson a little bit, Steve said. On Friday, the judge asked, what can I do to make sure that we get this case done before 2025? What do I have to do? And Thompson said, you got to start setting dates. And at the end of that court, what did he do? He didn't set a date. And we're like, that's your fault, Thompson. Today, after yet another back and forth about how much of the IGG the defense wants, Taylor asked the judge to allow 3 unnamed criminal investigators working for the defense to access the material. The meat of the session, finally, is a heated argument about a trial date. Steve is hopeful at the outset of the dialogue. John Judge and Thompson want it for March 3rd, 2025. But Taylor pushes back, managing to sound simultaneously calm and exasperated. Death is different, Taylor says. The words punch Olivia Gonsalves in the gut. Taylor continues, this is a capital case. I've heard the court say that the court only wants to do it once. And I've heard the court ask, what can I do to speed things up? She pauses. I need discovery. I need all of the discovery. When I ask for something I need to get it rather than have to go back and ask and ask and ask again. And I'm not trying to be mean about Bill Thompson, she says, looking directly at her former boss. I'm just not. I think he tries his very best. She blames the problem on agencies like the FBI, who she says hand over things piecemeal. It's like if you wanted to play 52-card pickup with 100,000 decks of cards and throw them in the air, and I have to figure out how to put them together. She wins the hour. No trial date is set. The judge adjourns with a further hearing scheduled for May to discuss a venue change. Steve can barely believe it. So here we are, stuck in this situation. We have a judge and a prosecution that's supposed to be defending us, acting like the biggest victim, and just keeps making us feel like a victim over and over. Every time we go in the courtroom, he just sits there and lets her hit him and lets her dictate everything that's going to happen. It's so frustrating. Steve feels he's got to do something, anything, to change the momentum. He's going to keep doing his own digging, If no one else can get a break in the case, he will. The discovery hasn't closed. If we do find something that they don't have, then they're going to have to put it in the case. And I don't care if they don't like the fact that someone else found it. That isn't part of their Idaho. That isn't part of Idaho. I don't know what kind of world we live in where we hide the truth. Chapter 129, Moscow, Idaho, May 3rd, 2024. When it comes to saying goodbye to the police department, he has served for 31 years. Chief Fry knows better than to try to get through it live. Instead, he sits near the front of the audience in the conference room of Moscow's Best Western Hotel next to Julie and his kids, while the assembled guests watch him give the farewell speech he'd recorded on video a week earlier. The raw, emotional, authentic performance would not be highly rated by his former press coach, Aaron Snell, and it's all the better for that. The chief's voice cracks, and he stumbles over his words as he runs through the very long list of people to thank. To everyone who worked the Idaho 4 homicides, Idaho State Patrol, FBI, Moscow officers, Utah County prosecutors, and the Idaho Attorney General's office, you are all the unsung heroes who did and continue to do a great job because of how you did your job. You have brought trust and respect back to the law enforcement community, to the Moscow police personnel. You are truly top-notch. He runs through the list: Bill Thompson, colleagues, patrol, corporals and sergeants, command, his family, his kids, his son-in-law, and then finally he gets to Julie. God knew I needed a strong wife, he says, tears welling at the thought of the woman who kept his whiskey levels in check during the winter of 2022 and has always been there for him. He and Julie recently took the Berkman personality test, and James wasn't shocked to discover that the colors of his personality were red for action, energy, green for communication, and blue for creativity, and that Julie's was yellow for order. She completes me, he says. Everyone in the room knows that this isn't farewell to James Fry, so much as see you later. Before he retired, the chief announced publicly that he would run for sheriff in November of 2024. He'll be up against Richie Skiles, the incumbent, which is somewhat awkward because they know each other well. This is Moscow, after all, and both men are well liked. But if he doesn't win that, he'll find something to keep him in the mix. Even so, the retirement of James Fry marks the end of an era, one in which the Moscow PD faced the most high-profile and arguably the most horrific challenge in its history. The house at 1122 King Road may be demolished, but the people in this room bear scars that will last forever, long after Brian Koberger has finally faced justice, whenever and wherever that happens. Exhibit A is Tyson Barrett, who is at the chief's retirement party. He has already told the chief he'll be having one of his own in July. Tyson is only 52, but the stress of the demands placed on him during the winter of 2022 have taken its toll. He's done. Fry later said that he regretted making Tyson the point person for all 4 victims' families. It was too heavy a burden for one man to bear in those ghastly 6 weeks between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve 2022. I should have split it up, he said. There was barely a dry eye in the room at the end of the ceremony when Anthony Dollinger hands James Fry his police radio to sign off for the last time. When the dispatcher utters the word, 101 is off duty for the final time, the room is silent. Heavy, says Dollinger, the new chief, in conclusion. Definitely a little heavy. So, why would he make one man the point person for all 4 of these families? Why wouldn't you assign one person to each family? You know what I mean? Let's see, how many more chapters do we have? Wow. We only have 8 chapters and an epilogue. 8 chapters left. Chapter 130, Prosper, Texas, May 20th, 2024. Oh, God, we're back to the Facebook group, people. After breakfast, Alina goes to her bedroom to check her phone before taking her house guests, a member of the Facebook page, and the woman's 7-year-old son to the airport. She's away for about 15 minutes. When Alina returns, she's clearly distressed. Her house guest observes that Alina's face is unrecognizable from all the tears. What happened in those 15 minutes is an argument over text with Christine, which has culminated in all the work Alina has done on all 10 of the Facebook pages she created and administered, with her oldest friend being eradicated. It's devastating. Why are we hearing about Facebook group drama? Alina is hardly in a fit state to drive, so her house guests take an Uber to the airport. Once she's alone, Alina returns to bed and stays there for the next 3 days. The fight between the two Facebook page founders began when Christine texted Alina to ask if she was promoting a new case discussion page about the recent controversial suicide of a Myrtle Beach woman, Micah Miller, whose husband was the pastor of a local church. Alina replied that she was. Christine responded that she couldn't believe Alina had started something without her. Alina explained that she had joined a crime scene collective as part of a victims advocacy foundation because she believed it would result in paid work, which she desperately needed. Christine, she thought, would understand. Alina had financial pressures, and Christine was so busy with her day job that Alina wanted to forge ahead on this. She was worried that the podcast project might never happen. But Christine did not understand. After a rapid-fire exchange of escalating, angry, expletive-filled texts, Christine deleted Alina from every Facebook page they had started together. Just like that, the childhood friends were done, over. But so too was everything Alina had worked on for years and years. Who cares? I mean, right, I mean, for the Papa Rogers stuff, but like, why do we want to know about their fucking drama? Excuse my French, but I got my own drama to worry about. And almost immediately, the dispute became public. Christine posted to the Facebook page her side of the story of Alina's betrayal. The post garnered 28,000 views and almost 500 comments. Not all of them were positive. What does this have to do, some members asked, with the tragic murders of 4 young innocents in Idaho? Olivia Gonsalves was one of those members. She messaged Christine that she felt what she'd written on the page was inappropriate. Olivia felt very sorry for Alina. She knew firsthand how hard Alina worked. Olivia could see how consistently and how often Alina had intervened on the page to squash some of the most outlandish conspiracy theories and victim blaming. Fearing that the page might be deleted suddenly in the midst of the fracas, Olivia joined another, smaller page, the University of Idaho Murders Case Discussion, as a backup. A couple days later, Alina became its administrator. It's not the outcome Alina had imagined when she and Christine started their page, and it took off so quickly. And it's not what Christine wanted either. The old page no longer accomplishes what it did at the height of the investigation. Who cares? No offense, but damn. Despite the building and anticipation around the upcoming trial, there's less media interest in the Facebook page than there used to be. Your time ran out, girls. That's all. Neither Alana or Christine is invited to go on News Nation much anymore. Privately, both women regret that the page's focus turned away from the victims and towards their messy personal affairs, but it's too late to mend fences. There's Olivia with an A, which is Gonsalves, and Olivia from Chronicles. Chapter 131, Moscow, Idaho, May 30th, 2024. Yet again, Steve thinks this hearing is a complete waste of everybody's time. Today, Ann Taylor kicks things off by interrogating Brett Payne about the surveillance video canvassing for the white Hyundai Elantra. She asks him to take her back in time to December 23rd, 2022, when he received Kohberger's phone records for the 48 hours around the murders and then issued a warrant for the 6 months prior to it. Payne patiently explains that he deferred to the FBI expert, Special Agent Nick Balance, to analyze the phone records, and that the PCA, probable cause affidavit, no surprise, was put together based on input from the experts at command. It's clear that the matter-of-fact way Payne answers Taylor's questions, that he's describing the workings of a well-oiled investigation. All the different teams and experts do what they do individually, then click together. But Taylor is looking to exploit any gaps in the machinery. She homes in on the fact that investigators didn't create a central inventory for the thousands of hours of video surveillance. Rather, it's stored on different thumb drives. And because he was focused only on the video that was relevant for the PCA, the video with the Elantra in it, Payne doesn't know where all of it is. Taylor wants the video they have on I-95, the main route back to Pullman, because the Elantra doesn't appear on it. In Payne's probable cause affidavit, he was careful not to specify which route Kohberger took from Moscow back to Pullman. Steve can see that the defense attorney is looking for any sort of hole. It's an absurdly low bar, he thinks. Worse, though, the technique plants seeds of doubt. Taylor is poisoning the audience by saying there's no connection, that there's no video. So when she starts doing that shit, I start getting impatient with Thompson and saying, she's kicking your ass in there and you need to stand up for us. Thompson is trying to push back. He told the judge the characterization that we are just consciously withholding information to the defense is utter nonsense. Indeed, at this point, Taylor concedes. The state has given the defense a 50-terabyte hard drive, more than 13,000 photographs, more than 15,000 video clips from businesses, and more than 8,000 video clips from residences. But Steve doesn't think Thompson is doing enough to manage public perception. He's upset with how Thompson questions one of the defense expert witnesses on April 10th. You acknowledge falsely that Mr. Kohberger alleged stalked one of the victims. That's false. You know that to be false, Thompson said. The defense expert confirmed that the information was false. Steve is totally confused. Maybe Thompson is being strategic. Or maybe stalking has some legal definition that Steve isn't aware of. But as far as he knows, and Steve knows a lot at this point, Kohberger for sure looked in at the King Road house several times before the night of November 13th. Steve has even gotten a hold of a video of a car idling outside it for 15 minutes. Ooh. He has video of a car idling outside the King Road house. He isn't positive, but it looks similar to Kohberger's. He's fairly certain from his own research that Kohberger showed up in the UI cafeteria. I told you! Didn't I tell you? Remember that picture where it looks like him sitting at that table? Okay, wait. He's fairly certain from his own research that Kohberger showed up at the UI cafeteria and that he was looking up residents with vegan options in the area. There's only one, the Mad Greek, where Maddie and Xana worked. So how can Thompson say there was no stalking? Maybe there's some rule around the term stalking, Steve reasons, where you have to physically communicate. I don't know. But I do believe that these victims were selected. I think he picked them and he monitored them and he studied them. He hunted them. And every father and mother's understanding is that he stalked them. Meanwhile, in court, he's got to sit through more mind-numbingly technical testimony from Cy Ray, a cell phone geolocation data analyst who says essentially there's stuff missing from the record. and the missing data, about 2 to 3% of the location data from Koberger's phone, could be important. Steve figures he knows a heck of a lot more about cell phone data than this guy. What they should be getting into, Steve thinks, is the trial date and Koberger's alibi. In April, Taylor filed papers saying that Koberger would use an alibi defense. She wrote that Koberger was out driving in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, as he often did, to hike and run and or see the moon and stars. He drove through the area south of Pullman, west of Moscow, including Wai State Park. What kind of half-baked alibi is that? Steve said. I mean, stargazing? Give me a break. Why doesn't Thompson try to get it thrown out as evidence? Steve doesn't get it. Not least because on the night of the murders, he's discovered there was very little visibility. The hearing ends with the state getting nowhere, as far as he can see. The afternoon session to talk further about the IGG is closed. Steve hears through the grapevine that during the closed sessions, the judge reams out Taylor. He would have liked to see that. For the moment, he and Christie use the only leverage they have, the media. They issue a statement. Wasn't this hearing supposed to address a motion to compel discovery? How did it evolve into an attack on the probable cause affidavit, the prosecution's witnesses, training records, and their evidence-gathering techniques? The court needs to take control of the case, and the attorneys involved. As long as the court continues to entertain anything and everything at every hearing, the delay will never end. Hey, Pines. I thank you so much, Sissy. Thank you, everybody. Chapter 132. Hey, Robat. Priest Lake, Idaho, June 2024. It's a beautiful day when Stacy Chapin gets the call from Bill Thompson's office. Next week, there's a hearing at which finally the judge will set a trial date. It's likely to be summer 2025. Thompson would like for it to happen when there are no students around. He pointed out to the judge that the high school is opposite of the courthouse. Again, who cares? The news is something of a relief to Stacy, the first hint that maybe some sort of end could be in sight. Although by now, she knows better than to count her chickens. You have to be in for the long haul, a prosecutor friend of theirs told her. You have to let the defense put up everything. And Stacy has been warned that it's possible the trial will not happen in Moscow. Despite the best efforts of the prosecutors, the defense will continue arguing that the community is too small and too prejudiced to provide Koberger with an impartial jury. But where will they go when the trial takes place? Stacy starts to wonder, will they stay at Priest Lake? Part of her wants to leave the country for 3 months. She knows that the press coverage will be intense, and that means reliving the horrors of November 13th. But after months of agonizing, she, Jim, Maisie, and Hunter decide that they want to be there to represent Ethan, especially at the opening when the first jury convenes. They also want to be in the courtroom to support Hunter Johnson and Emily, and all of Ethan and Xana's other friends that will likely have to testify. It will be a necessary but sorry interruption from the new normal that's finally emerging. Both Chapin kids are now so busy during the semester that their parents no longer feel they need to visit Moscow every other weekend. Hunter and Maisie are set to graduate in May of 2025. This summer, Jim is training Hunter to work with him in the machinery construction business. And Hunter also got his EMT certification. Maisie has been working as a server at Hills Resort. After college, she's considering either training as a professional chef or studying nursing. Public speaking, Stacy is finding, is a positive thing for her to do, provided it's an appropriate forum that focuses not on the salacious aspects of the murder, but on the family's values that are Stacy's strong suit. She loves to talk about Ethan, but she's also beginning to realize that there's an appetite out there for the positivity that she and Jim are trying to create to remember him by. In April, Stacy flew to LA to record an episode of The Squeeze, the mental wellness podcast hosted by actor Taylor Lautner, who starred in the Twilight films, and his wife, Taylor Dome. When Lautner asked her what she felt about Kohberger's trial and the path to justice, Stacy said, "One of the greatest messages I feel like we've done in handling this situation, nothing changes the outcome. We cannot bring Ethan back. So you can spend a lot of the time there, or you can just realize and figure out how to move forward." And the Chapins are moving forward. They like to walk around the lake and sit on the wooden bench engraved with their late son's name. Ethan would be very proud, Stacy often says to Jim, when they look out at the water and his beloved volleyball court at Hills Resort. They like to come to this bench and sip mimosas, and they watch the sun sink behind the mountains. Even better is when Hunter and Maisie are around on the weekends. The entire family can all look at the lake and talk about Ethan in what was probably his favorite spot in the world. They can find peace, even. The funny thing is, Ethan would be like, "Well, of course my parents knocked it out of the park. That's just how we roll as a family," Stacy says, to her husband, who nods in agreement. "We had a motto, go big or go home, and that's what we've done." Hello, hello. Welcome in. Chapter 133. Post Falls, Idaho, June 15th, 2024. The black tie crowd at the inaugural Make It Pink Gala is so large, it's hard to see everyone who's turned out to support the new Made with Kindness nonprofit that's been set up in honor of Maddie and Kaylee by Maddie's sorority friend, Ashlyn Couch. There's a hiccup in the check-in desk for the people in formal dress who are in a line that goes past the bathrooms and around the corner all the way to the elevators. It's a good 30-minute wait. No one minds. They're there for a good cause. They can even buy the merchandise laid out on a table if they want. Tonight, even though people are there to support the Gonsalveses and the Laramies, the Gonsalves family, seated around two tables in the middle of the room, mostly keep to themselves. They lent Kaylee's name to the nonprofit, but because they know only a handful of people here, one might miss them in the crush. When the MC mentions Kaylee and Maddie, Christy puts her head in her hands and weeps. Steve puts his arm around her. It's a bittersweet moment. Christy and the girls have been looking forward to this. It's an excuse, Steve says, for them to get their hair and nails done, and for him to put on a black tie. And it's wonderful that there is a new scholarship in Kaylee and Maddie's names. During the event, it's announced that Xana's name will complete the trifecta. But they still haven't gotten justice for their daughter. That night, Steve said he heard the good news from Thompson that there's likely to be a court date set. Finally. But his patience with Ann Taylor is as thin as ever. He particularly objects to one line she repeatedly uses in court. "Judge, if we ever get to trial." And she doesn't want to get to trial, Steve says. Well, Bill Thompson needs to press the judge and find a defense attorney who does want to. Steve is still pursuing his parallel investigation. He's seeking the answers to a million questions about Kohberger's connection to the King Road house. For instance, he says, he'd like to know more about what Dylan saw that night. He feels certain he doesn't know everything about what she witnessed. Someone told him that she had hid in a closet. Maybe she phoned someone? He's heard there's evidence on her phone that's important. Steve is still pissed that 1122 King Road was demolished by the university when, as he puts it, 75% of the parents were against it. When the time is right, he'll be ready to look at his options for civil cases. He's on a roll. Suddenly, Christy prods her husband. "Is that Blaine Eccles?" she says, shocked, looking across the room. "It can't be," Steve said. Post Falls is a 90-minute drive from Moscow. Blaine Eccles didn't tell the Gonsalves or Laramie families he was coming. And yet, it is Blaine Eccles sitting with a bunch of random strangers. "I was a little curious to see how my presence would be received," the dean later said. The Gonsalves family is stunned, given the back and forth over the King Road demolition. Christy and Olivia leap up and go to say hello to him. And then they bring Eccles to their table. Steve and Eccles shake hands. Eccles tells them that the university's Healing Garden, a project he spearheaded and has overseen to commemorate the victims and help the community grieve, is nearly done. It's likely to open in August, at the start of the fall semester. Of course, he wants the family there. When Eccles leaves, readying for his 90-minute drive back to Moscow, Steve Gonsalves actually smiles. It's Father's Day weekend, and Eccles bothered to come. In spite of himself and the fights, Steve is touched. Classy, he says. Chapter 134, Broadheadsville, Pennsylvania, September 2024. As Connie Saba is shopping in the Rite Aid in Broadheadsville, she sees someone in the pain relief aisle who looks familiar. She stops. Is it someone she used to work with? Then she realizes it's Michael Koberger, Brian's dad. Connie, he says, is that you? How are you, Michael? She replies. He seems very pleased to talk to someone. My heart goes out to Marianne, Connie says. How is she? Michael tells her that his wife doesn't talk to anyone, even on the phone. We lead a very quiet life, he says. We don't go out. And even when they are home, he says, they don't feel safe. People, he tells her, are watching our house. What people? Government people, he says, leaving her slightly confused. Then he says, you know Brian didn't do it, right, Connie? Connie thinks. She says, the Brian I know wouldn't do it. She wants to be supportive. It's then that Michael seems to remember that he hasn't spoken to her since Jeremy died. We were both shocked to hear that Jeremy died, he tells her. Marianne wanted to call you, but she felt unable to. He doesn't explain why. Does Brian know that Jeremy died? Brian was away, Michael says. He doesn't say where. We didn't tell him for months. But yes, he knows. Brian wasn't the same after the drugs, he adds. He wasn't the same person. Connie nods, but she thinks even on drugs, Jeremy remained sweet and good-natured. But Brian was framed, Michael says. Connie is startled. Framed? Someone planted the knife sheath, he tells her. The police didn't find it when they first went in. There were a lot of drugs in that house, a lot of people around, but they only looked at Brian. You know how he likes to drive around when he's nervous? Connie doesn't, but Michael tells her. He always used to get in the car and drive at night when he needed to think or had some kind of fog. He had to get away and just think. Or when he couldn't sleep, he would just drive around. Michael adds, things will come out in the trial. Everyone will see. The two go down memory lane, reminiscing about Jeremy's and Brian's childhoods, and the two boys running back and forth between their respective houses. Connie asks after Michael's daughters, Amanda and Melissa. She's read news reports that Melissa was fired from her job, but she doesn't ask specifically about that. Michael says they're good. They chat in the aisle for at least an hour. Michael almost seems almost sorry to leave. She can tell he doesn't get to blow off steam much. That night, she phones her daughter, Bridget, to go over the whole extraordinary conversation. Connie feels for Michael Koberger. He clearly believes his son is innocent. She isn't sure if he's in denial or not, but she can empathize with how a parent must feel in a situation like this, given everything the Kobergers tried to do for Brian. If he was my child, she later said, I'd probably be the same way. Chapter 135, Moscow, Idaho, August 21st, 2024. It's blisteringly hot, but the Sig Chai brothers wear their suits nonetheless. They want to honor Ethan. Stacy Chapin hugs each of them as they file into the new Vandal Healing Garden and Memorial for the dedication ceremony. She asked Blaine Eccles earlier if the guys could sit close to the Chapins. It's the first time since the tragedy on November 13th that representatives of all four victims' families are together in Moscow. The Gonsalveses sit at the front to the left facing the podium. Ben Mogan's behind them. The Chapins and the Kernodles, represented by Jasmine and a couple of Xana's aunts, sit to the right. James Fry stands at the back, almost recognizable in his jeans. Mayor Betke is there. So are most of the Moscow PD. They are standing guard. There are still some true crime maniacs around who are unhealthily obsessed with the King Road murders. Occasionally, they surface on campus. And, though few people will talk about it, everyone is aware that sitting in a basement cell less than a mile away is the suspected killer. For Steve and Christy, he's front of mind. The hearing to decide on the change of venue is only about 3 days away. Christy posted on their Facebook page, "All I can think about is the change of venue hearing this Thursday. I'm just sick about it. I wish I could snap my fingers and it would be over. The anticipation eats me alive. Please pray for us." Today, though, the Gonsalves family is not on defense. In fact, they are fully supportive of Dean Eccles and the university. Christy even wears a t-shirt emblazoned with Vandal Strong. Steve Gonsalves chats amicably with Chief Fry. He shakes Jim Chapin's hand. Dean Eccles hands him a folder of Kaylee's work. Steve and Christy do several interviews with the local media. They say that yes, it's hard to be here, but they are glad to honor their daughter. They think the healing garden is a wonderful idea. Dean Eccles came up with the concept of the garden after the vigil. He knew that the university needed to memorialize the Idaho 4, and while they were at it, he thought, why not create a space to remember all the UI students who passed away too soon while attending college? There have been 4 student deaths since November 2022. So the dean invited everyone to discuss where the space might go and what it would look like. More than 100 students, among them Hunter Chapin, and faculty members came. Eccles created a garden committee that included not just landscape architects, but representatives of the victims' fraternities and sororities. 1 from A Phi, 1 from Sig Chi, and 2 from Pi Phi. Dr. Shauna Corey, the dean of the UI's College of Art and Architecture, developed a class focused on the creation of a template. They identified plants that worked well with our temperature, our climate, time of year. They measure how dark it gets on what days of the year. They have done so much work, Dean Eccles said with pride. Earlier in the spring of 2023, the 4 families were invited to sit in on the class and give their input. Stacy felt it was one of the most cathartic experiences she and Jim have had since Ethan's death. The kids didn't ask them specific questions about garden design. They asked general, thoughtful questions, like, what does it mean to be a vandal? And what are the words that describe Ethan? Ever the mother hen, Stacy felt the bond forming with these young kids, and she's thrilled to recognize many of them, wearing matching black shirts on this big day. Emily Alant can't get to the ceremony today. The drive from Boise is too long, and Hunter Johnson is at work. But she was asked to pick a flower for Xana. She'd suggested a Peruvian lily, because the lily is Xana's birth flower, and the Peruvian lily, Emily thinks, has the same sort of sparkle and spirituality as her late friend. The Gonsalves family will post on Facebook they found it a deeply emotional, special day. They have buried the hatchet with the university, for now. It's hard to say which part of it is most moving. Maybe it is the moment of silence. Or maybe it is when Drew Giacomazi, Ethan's friend and fraternity brother, speaks about each of the 4 victims, concisely describing their distinct personalities, in a way no one will easily forget. Do more of what you love to honor Kaylee. Spread that love of random kindness for Maddie. Be silly and do something spontaneous and fun to honor Xana. And tell stories with an abundance of laughter to live life like Ethan. Chapter 136, Moscow, Idaho, August 29th, 2024. The hearing to decide the change of venue lasts over 6 hours. Steve is not hopeful that the trial will stay in Moscow. Despite his best efforts to convey his feelings to the judge via Bill Thompson, the expert witnesses that Ann Taylor produces, who testify it would be impossible in tiny Moscow to find a fair and impartial jury, seems to speak out of both sides of their mouths, Steve thinks. One expert says, you can call the jury and they can still remain impartial. And another expert says, you hear something and you can never get it out of your head, Steve said afterwards. But he's gotten the impression for months now that Bill Thompson doesn't really want to run the risk of having a trial in Moscow because of the university. The problem, Steve thinks, is that some of these people seem to put the university first, ahead of the victims. They all went there. Thompson said in court it would be better to avoid having a trial when students are around. That's why he wants to have it in summer. Steve was not pleased when he heard that. I mean, that's kind of a weird way to present 4 murders to a judge. I agree. He's also worried that the university timetable will give Ann Taylor some excuse to push the trial back beyond next summer. So even though he feels that it should be local and that it would be one heck of an inconvenience for him and Christy if it gets moved all the way to Boise, he also figures it might not be all that bad to get out of our cozy cabal that is Moscow. He'd welcome a new judge. Today, John C. Judge, typically punts, making a decision at the hearing himself. He thanks both sides for their really solid arguments. I would say that professionally, this is the most difficult decision I've ever had to make, he adds. On September 6th, in the form of a written decision, the bad news arrives. The judge writes that the defense has met the rather low standard of a basis to move venues. It isn't just that the media storm might have swayed jurors. There are practical considerations of a tiny courthouse and staff. The Gonsalves post their reaction on Facebook. The family is incredibly disappointed in the judge's ruling granting the change of venue. The only good thing about this decision is it will be Judge's last decision in this case. It isn't clear for a few days where the trial will be moved. But on September 12th, the Idaho Supreme Court orders it moved to Boise, Ada County, under the jurisdiction of a new judge, Stephen Hippler. Steve says that Hippler is no stranger to capital cases. He's known to be strict and stern. Good. Are you guys still with me? I agree, Stacy, with that. Sophia, I did not practice at all. No, this is the first time I'm seeing it. It is crazy, Stacy. Thank you, though, Sophia. I'm glad I seem relaxed and well rehearsed. Chapter 137, Moscow, Idaho, September 15th, 2022. Brian Koberger has flown 300 miles south to Boise and booked in the Ada County Jail. There is the inevitable media fanfare around his trip. Mike Patterson considers this to be almost a literal weight off the minds of people in Moscow. Many of them might have wanted the trial held locally for emotional reasons, but no one liked the idea of Koberger sitting underground virtually beneath them. It emerges that his exit is barely a day too soon. On October 3rd, it's reported that the Latah County Jail might finally be closed down because it does not meet code regulations. What? A new fire marshal has arrived in town, looked over the facility, and has said that the fire sprinklers and electrical systems don't meet standards and the doors are too small. Evan Ellis covers the story. He reports that rebuilding the jail could cost up to $14 million, minus the cost of the land. If city commissioners decide it's too expensive, Moscow's criminals might need to be housed in Lewiston instead. And the move could happen in just 2 weeks. Thank the Lord Koberger is not in there, Evan says, imagining the stink there would have been. Can you imagine? Hello, Miss Flo. Being the cynical journalist that he is, he considers the timing. The election for sheriff is barely a month away, and he thinks that it might be fortuitous for James Fry's campaign because the jail's failure to meet code regulations happened on his opponent's watch. Is the new fire marshal a Fry guy and trying to help him out, or just a by-the-book guy and it's just coincidence? Evan asked. I have no idea, he says with a laugh. Chapter 138. Rathdrum, Idaho, September 28th, 2024. Olivia and Christy feel like they've hit a wall. They are going to need housing in Boise for 3 months. But they learn that there is no federal, state, or local assistance for families who have lost a loved one. The only option they realize with input from Jack DeCour's aunt, Brooke Miller, is to start a Gonsalves family GoFundMe page. The family asked initially for $50,000 to house them for 3 months. They will need to be in Boise next summer for the trial. They explained that there will be 10 of them, as well as pets, for the long haul. They need the basics: money for housing, food, travel, and compensation for loss of work. Money pours in, but the trial date remains uncertain. In his first hearing in Boise, Judge Hippler says he's leaning away from the June date set by the previous judge because he thinks it will be hard to pick a jury given family vacation schedules. That's weird, too. Thompson suggests May. Taylor suggests September. Taylor hits her usual theme of being overloaded with discovery. She's received an additional 398 gigabytes of information since August, she says. And I can tell the court that nobody on the team has read every bit of that yet. She also has a new mitigation expert she needs to bring up to speed because this person replaced someone who passed away. But in a sign, perhaps, that Judge Hippler has less appetite for delay than John Judge. He tells her she needs to get it done by the deadline he sets. There are 24 hours in a day, but if you can use enough of those hours, enough days in a row, you get it done if you have to. The judge delivers a stern lecture to both teams at the outset. I'd like to say I'm happy to be here, but why start with an untruth, he adds. I do expect, and this will come as no surprise to you, for you all to get along. I understand the stakes in this case are as high as they can possibly be in any case. Now, why would a judge outright say, I'd like to say I'm happy to be here, but why start with an untruth? I mean, isn't he supposed to be about justice? In this case, deserves justice? Like, I don't know. I don't like that. But you are professionals. You have taken oaths, both as officers within your jurisdictions, but also as attorneys before this bar. So I expect at all times for you to remain civil to one another, that you do not engage in personal attacks, ad hominem attacks, that you do not engage in theatrics, not misstate the facts or the law to the court, and that when you cite arguments, there is a contradictory precedent. I expect to see that. Contradictory precedent. I expect to see that. On October 9th, Judge Hippler issues his ruling. This trial will start on August 11th and run through November 7th. The Gonsalves family finally feel optimistic. The atmosphere in Judge Hippler's courtroom is palpably fresh, electric even. Once they get to trial, Steve hopes events will be anticlimactic. He has reason to be hopeful. Steve's FBI sources have told him that when the agency is involved in a capital murder case, they secure a conviction over 93% of the time. The odds, therefore, of getting a conviction in a quadruple homicide, well, you do the math, he says. A lawyer for the FBI told Steve that in all his years of experience, he's never seen a case where DNA has been found at a crime scene and it didn't lead to that conviction. A piece of evidence like that is, quote-unquote, insurmountable. Kathy Mabut, the coroner, and other investigators agree. But there's one person in Moscow who is worried. Mike Pattinson, the Moscow lawyer and Ann Taylor's old classmate, isn't so confident. Ann's a sharp litigator, he says, and he wouldn't want to bet against her. Mike hopes he's wrong, but if it's just a knife sheath that happens to have Koberger's DNA on it, what does that mean, he asks. Is the DNA by itself enough proof? Taylor will argue it isn't. She will also likely challenge the process upon which investigators came about this DNA, Mike believes. She may even offer alternative theories or suggest that somebody, perhaps a crooked police officer, could have planted it. So now the stage is set for the drama that will begin in August. The moment when Emily, Hunter Johnson, Bethany, Dylan, Ava, Jack Secor, Adam, and so many others in the victim's circle will likely have to take their positions in the witness box and relive the horrific events of November 13th. As to whether Brian Koberger will be found guilty or be acquitted, that's a story for another time. So that's the end, and now we're to the epilogue. We are almost done, guys. Pretty amazing. Epilogue. The orange no trespassing sign is the only indication that something terrible happened here. The patch of land where 1122 King Road once stood is now strangely peaceful. Green shoots spring out of the earth. Birds sing. Students come and go from houses and dorms all around. But no one stops to gawk anymore. There's nothing to see. Just a small field that's overrun with weeds. Most of the students now on campus are of a different, younger generation. They have no memory of Ethan, Xana, Maddie, or Kaylee. They have no memory of the parties, the laughter, and the life that once blazed here. They have no memory of the deck where the inhabitants drank coffee and posed for Instagram photos. But a stone's throw away, the 4 plaques in the healing garden ensure that no member of the Vandal family, past, present, or future, will forget the names of the 4 innocents that lived on this piece of green, happily and hopefully. Their names are Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee. And then we have acknowledgments, and that's it. The end. Now we wait for sentencing for next week. What do you guys think? I don't think he's faring too well. He didn't look too good in that hearing yesterday. And once he gets to a state prison, yikes. So according to this book, they're saying that, in prisons, they wait for someone who's done something of his magnitude. And it's not going to be good for him. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you, Evelyn, again. You guys, this has been The Idaho 4, An American Tragedy by James Patterson and Vicki Ward. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up and finish my chapters. And it will be up for replay. If you guys, want to listen to it, you can actually speed it up on replay, which is great. I know I liked the beginning too. Mother Cycle. There was some new stuff though, and I'm making some shorts on, some of the stuff that, came out that we already knew. I do still have some questions though about some things. So hopefully we can get those when everything's unsealed and maybe some more interviews are done and stuff like that. Oh, I gotta do some thank yous. I've got some super chats. Hold on. Hold the phone. We had Sophia gift a membership. Thank you so much, Sophia. Texas RN. Wow, I stopped listening to the audiobook. This is much better. Thanks, Jay. Thank you so much. Dina Weeks. Thank you, Jay, for reading this. Thank you, Dina, for your $9.99. And thank you, Miss Robat, for your $19.99 super chat. You're very welcome. I enjoyed doing it. I don't know if I'd want to do this every day of my life. It was a lot, but I think we should. After looking at this and looking at Howard's book, look, I think we should read Howard's book as well. Because the text is a lot smaller, but I think we should do this. I just need a little break. Whew, my mouth is dry. I sent an interview in Discord for you this AM. Oh, thank you, Flo. Thank you for your super sticker. Thank you, Orion. Thank you, Melissa B, for your $15 super chat. If you guys check out I'm not going to pull it up right now, but if you guys check out my shorts, I did put some of Steve's interview in there, and you can find it, I think, on Ashley Banfield. What's a great, thank you, Real Cals. Thank you for all your work. Thank you, Mrs. O. I appreciate it. Yeah, so we'll figure out a time to read Howard's book, and I just need a break. It's been a lot sitting here reading for 3 days in a row. So I appreciate your guys' kind words. I appreciate your super chats, your support of memberships, and hitting that thumbs up is a great way to support as well. Thank you, Sheila. You were worried about my vocal cords? No, they're fine. All right. Well, we'll see what happens in the future. Thank you so much again. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this live stream or video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on my latest content. Want to take it a step further? Bring it all in. And join our community clickers by becoming a Patreon or a YouTube member. You'll get exclusive access to our Discord server, special channel perks, and much more. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.
Click. It's real easy, man.